Hello, everyone. Welcome to Comically Exposed, episode 11. I am Heather, and my co-host is...
Gabbie, who couldn't wait to get on the microphone.
And we're back.
We sure are. So you're welcome, I think is what you meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I just keep stepping on your toes, but for the avid listener, and we know there are dozens of you, we said last week that we had an interview coming up or last episode, and we do. It's just taking a little bit of technical finesse because the joys of international recording have come to roost, mixed metaphors. And Heather, being our intrepid everything, is having to square a few circles. That another good metaphor to toss in?
Sure.
Analogy.
Yeah, no, it got complicated. It went beyond my knowledge base. I figured it out now, and now we're going to have an interview. So yeah, episode 12 coming up next will be Ege.
Yeah. And it's awesome. The interview went really, really well. It's too bad that we can't just use the raw footage because of all the technicality stuff. But it was a really informative interview and hilarious. And I'm not going to say that I didn't have empathy for contamination OCD before. I definitely did. But it's really interesting to hear other people's flavors of OCD and how it's affect them and where they think it originated from and all that stuff. So, yeah.
It was a fun interview, and Ege is hilarious. So hopefully, I can't wait for you guys to listen to it.
Yeah.
Gabbie. So
yes?
Do you have any updates for us?
Oh boy. I do. Some of the updates are about the job search, still doing it, really getting into having a gentle grasp as to jobs that I am going to apply to. So maybe I apply to jobs in Sacramento. Maybe I apply to jobs in LA. Maybe I apply to jobs, in the Bay Area, whatever. I'm being kind of curious, right?
Yeah.
And in talking to my OCD therapist this past week, he reiterated that it is the employer's job to decide whether or not I'm qualified. Like me deciding whether or not I'm qualified for a job, I'm always going to say that I'm not qualified. Do you know what I mean? That is just my fallback position, which might be why it's so hard for me to get another job. And he's like, that's not you need to apply. And then somebody else gets to say, oh, we love you. Please come work for us. Or, oh, you have no skills here, but we want to hire you. Or you have no skills here and we don't want to hire you. Whatever. So that's happening. The application for these state jobs is, it's just so much. It's so much of okay, fill out this, basic application form and then fill out your resume, but then also fill out this other form that shows your experience level, but then also write us a letter about projects that you've done. But all of them require different formats and different websites to, look at. So anyway, trying to be very gentle with the whole dang process. But my homework, for my ADHD therapist was to come up with 5 different jobs that I would like to possibly have. And I've come up with those. So that's cool. So, yeah.
Wow. So you're getting used to going back a little bit, the bureaucracy of trying to apply for a government job.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Being cool with it.
Yeah. Fascinating process. So then, and you also mentioned earlier, and you kind of hopped over it a little bit, which is fine. When you're talking about curiosity, becoming more curious about jobs, and then also allowing the employer to select you. Would you like to expand upon that kind of idea of because I'm circling the drain of rejection.
Yes, you are. Yes. Because
yes,
in the past, perhaps now as well, I would love to control the outcome of everything. And that's the OCD aspect, which I think you're nudging at.
Yes.
And the pain of rejection, OCD promises that I wouldn't have to go through rejection if I just followed the OCD playbook, right? And never mind that the OCD playbook is, touch that pine cone over there, do these mental compulsions, all very normal stuff. Yeah. So I can somehow make it, I don't know. I think I'm talking in circles right now. It's so I can control the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's about control. I mean, that's what OCD wants to do, right? Is to control uncertainty.
Yes.
And so make it certain. And the only way that we could make it certain is to be sure about something. And
or avoid it all.
Not life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or avoid it altogether. Yeah.
Exactly, which is my favorite compulsion. And so with job stuff, that's usually my compulsion is like, well, I don't like if I can't
you don't apply.
Yes.
They can't reject you.
Exactly. Yes. And also the perfectionism comes in as well, which is let me make this application so perfect that they won't reject me. Let me, do all this extra research into the company, into the job position, into like looking at Glassdoor and comparable salaries, and then, doing all this extra research, which would be fine if I was somebody who was in a field that I wanted to continue in, was looking at like just a set amount of jobs already in this field. But instead, I'm casting a very wide net because what I really know is I don't want to be in education anymore. All of that, if I did the same level of research into each one of those positions, it is, the internet exists, so it is a never ending rabbit hole, and I will never feel that just right feeling. My application will never be perfect. And so instead I will do 3/4, 95% of an application and then just not send it in, not get it in by the deadline, whatever it is, so that I, maybe it's self-sabotage in other circles, but in OCD, it's avoidance.
Yeah. It's like very simply avoidance. And I feel you on that one because I do that one too.
Yeah. And it's a shame because it's like the amount of work that I've put into the application and not turned it in. I think if the employer knew that amount, they would be like, oh shit, like this is a very hard worker. This is somebody who would be great, maybe not for this position, but for something else. But I don't. Also, the application process, you really have to be a salesman of yourself. And I hate that. And I know a lot of people hate doing that. And I've tried to kind of farm it out. I've tried to work with career counselors, and maybe I just haven't found the right one. But it has not really been helpful. And the whole point of me getting this job is so I can do comedy, like I was just talking to a friend of mine who was like, hey, there's this open mic night and they do comedy and music. That's it. What time do you get off of work on Tuesdays? And I'm like, technically 8 p.m., but really if I do all of my paperwork, like 9:30 p.m. And the show starts at 7:30 and the sign up is 6 p.m. So, and that's true for like most open mic nights. So if I really want to make a play at stand-up comedy, I need a job that's 9 to 5 or part-time or whatever the hell it is, but not this job. The curiosity mindset also comes into play because the other methodologies are white knuckling, which I'm sure comes up with other things besides OCD. But for OCD, it is your anxiety raises. You're basically just this side of a panic. And you are pushing yourself through an experience or whatever it is, but you're white knuckling. So you're not really present. You're not really there, I guess. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on white knuckling?
Yeah. I mean, I think you were right when you said you're not present, because if anything, when I'm in that mode, I'm not very nice to myself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like being extremely critical, like self-critical about, why don't you just do this? Just do it, and just kind of yelling at yourself, which, is not a great motivator if somebody else is doing it to you.
And it turns out not a great motivator if you do it to yourself.
Exactly. And anything that we've learned in therapy is being mindful. And then also, I think we say this a lot, but self-compassion comes in to play a lot, to kind of remind yourself that you're human.
Yes.
Which is a weird thing to say out loud, but it's very true.
Oh, God, is it ever?
And yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
I'm glad you noticed that too.
You.
Like, that you were in that mode. Even when you're in that mode, it's just acknowledging it. It's just like
is the first step.
Exactly.
To kind of like dismantling it to getting back to, oh, what do I want to choose to do in this moment, or to how to handle this moment. And I also think that curiosity is a better way of saying it than, we've talked about CBT, and I had a CBT therapist that didn't work out for me because if you have intrusive thoughts and cognitive behavioral therapy, that's CBT, they say write down all of the intrusive thoughts and then write down like counter arguments to like the negative ones. But I'm like, I will never stop doing this exercise because it will just bring up more thoughts, and then I'll have to counterbalance those thoughts, and then those counterbalances, I have counterbalance thoughts that come up. Like it's a never ending whirlpool. And the CBT therapist was not really on board. And I was like, oh, you don't work with OCD people, do you? Anyway, the whole point of that is to say the other piece of psychology, which you and I talked about on the last podcast, is the like positive psychology, the whole like, well, just think happy thoughts and then you'll be a happy person. And it's like, yeah, if it was that easy, I'd be doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, it's more like I would actually feel things, because a lot of my issues before I went to my current psychiatrist was that I felt like I couldn't feel my emotions.
Right.
And so when people were saying like, just put a positive spin on it. And then I'm like,
you're like, on what? I can't feel anything.
I know. It's like, and so, of course that brings up other things with OCD is like, am I a sociopath or whatever, and so.
I totally had those thoughts. Yeah.
It's like where you take those like polls, or not polls, but the
online quizzes. Yeah.
Are you a psychopath? Online quizzes.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God.
Those are so horrible.
Yes, truly. But that's the thing is like, so instead of, and also the like, have a grateful mindset, you know what I mean? Or even the whole like mindfulness, which I think originally was about something very specific, but has been kind of used in a sort of pop psychology, you know, Instagram, TikTok-y way to describe like some nonsense as well. The curiosity mindset, I like a lot more. It resonates with me because it's like, when people, when people talk about being a kid and like, have like a child's mindset and whatever else, and the innocence of a child and the naivete. And I'm like, innocence and naivete are not cool things. Truly. They're not things that are going to help you survive in this life. And they're really not things that should be valued because it kind of devalues actual experience. And I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The whole point is the thing that is cool about being a kid is being curious about everything. And it's actually, to me, it's more of a balanced way to look at the world. It's like, I'm not looking at it thinking, well, the worst will happen. And I'm not looking at it thinking, well, the best will happen. I'm looking at it and going, oh, I wonder what will happen.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, curiosity. I mean, that's the level where I have to check myself if I'm doing research on a topic, because sometimes I don't catch my compulsions as well. And since we're both problem solvers. Sometimes they could feel the same at first.
Yes.
And when I pull myself back and I ask myself a question, am I asking myself open-ended questions? Is it like more curiosity, or am I trying to control something?
Yes.
And then you start to see the distinction between the two. Or the other thing is control could also look like, is this just right? Like, am I going towards something, and searching for something as if this is the right answer, versus just being a little bit more open about what's happening and allowing whatever the answer to be the answer, or not an answer.
Yeah.
Be open to the idea of not getting an answer.
Exactly.
Yeah, is powerful.
Yeah. And it always, like when I was a kid and I was like, I'm going to grow up and be a scientist, it was mostly because, once I heard about scientists and like the scientific method, it was like you start off with a hypothesis, but then you observe shit or you do an experiment, and then you're like, oh, what actually happened? Right? It's like, I thought that maybe lemurs could talk, right? But then I've, watched a bunch of lemur videos. Nobody's talking. And so, my conclusion is, I don't think lemurs can talk. But it's just that like having a question, but not having the question be a leading question, not having, like you said, needing to control the outcome. And so with the state job, it's like, maybe I'll move to Sacramento, which is interesting because I, grew up in Davis and I have a deep loathing of the Central Valley because that's where I grew up. And it was mostly like the junior high and high school years were spent there. So the best years. And so it was like, when I graduated high school, I was like, I'm never fucking coming back to this place ever again, and my family moved away from there. So it was like, I'm never going back to Central Valley. And now I'm like, you know what? Sacramento actually has it's more affordable than the Bay Area. Of course, like pretty much any place in the world is more affordable than the stupid Bay Area at this point. But the affordability factor means artists can afford to live there, which means there will be a more thriving comedy scene, which means, and potentially I'll be able to like live in a semi-decent house or apartment or just any sort of living situation instead of, potentially renting a $3,000 room here. And, there's black mold in all four corners.
And you have 10 roommates.
Yes, exactly. The thing is, they're all named Henry, and it's weird.
It's weird.
Because they won't go by like, oh, that's Henry A and that's Henry P. No. They only go by Henry. No Hanks. It's just Henry. Everybody turns around. And it's like, then they'll say, Henry's the one who ate the peanut butter. And I'm like, God, but I don't know which Henry. Anyway, my life is hard. So having a curiosity mindset about a job search is very beneficial. Even in just looking at job postings. It's like, I don't know, maybe. Cool.
Do you feel like there's more possibilities?
Yes. Oh my God. 1,000%. Yeah. And it's kind of like looking at life and this as more of an adventure, which when I felt like my mentals have been in a healthier position, that was kind of my outlook on life, Yeah. Yeah. And this also goes into making choices, which is very difficult for me because with that just right OCD, you want to make the right choice. And the right choice is whatever feels right. And so to do that, you may need to research, or you may need to, game out in your head, well, what if I choose left? Well, what if I choose right? Well, if I think about all the possibilities, then I'll make the right choice. And it's like, oh, for the love of Pete. Now you've been in your head for 3 hours and no decision has been made, So anyway, that's how I'm feeling. How about you, my friend? What's been going on these past couple of weeks?
Didn't get as much done as I thought I would for writing. I was going to work on short humor and then be a little bit more open-ended with writing my pilot script. But life happens. And then also I got caught up in trying to fix the last interview of the podcast, which I learned a lot on how to fix. It's funny. I'm learning a lot about audio. So I'm not going to discredit that I didn't work on anything.
Good.
It's just... it's still a feeling that's uncomfortable. that I just didn't get it done. And you could have just done that. You had time. And in reality, if I really looked at, the last 2 weeks, I'm like, I had a lot going on. It's just, not a lot of writing time, which happens sometimes. Sometimes I get so much writing time, and I feel like I didn't get enough done, and so it's just kind of sitting with that discomfort and realizing, yay, I'm getting our podcast done, and that's okay.
I would say more than okay. And that's not just because we're currently on the podcast, but I deeply appreciate it. And it is, I know that you say that it's interesting work to you, but it is also so much work that you put into it that I'm really thankful for.
Oh, well, thank you. I find it interesting because it's something I've never done before in terms of audio work. I'm still very much a novice. If I have to fix something, it's a lot of YouTube videos of people telling me how to fix things. And, sometimes they work and sometimes I'm like, that's stupid. I'm not doing that.
I think that's the modern way to do things. I mean, at one point you didn't know how to do something. You'd go get the manual from the library or purchase it at a bookstore. But now it's YouTube videos.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of fun. I mean, the podcast stuff is fun. I mean, talking about the podcast on the podcast is whatever it is. Meta. I know. Get over it, Heather. Anyway. But I think it is a fascinating process because I'm getting better and faster at cutting and editing our podcast. But every now and then I run into some technical difficulties and it kind of, I don't know, broadens my knowledge base of audio stuff. And so didn't realize I would be into it. So that's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool.
I think it's very cool. Mostly I feel very lucky that you think it's cool. Because you make the podcast sound amazing and then it's interesting to you. So that seems like a double yay.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I'm like trying to figure out how do I respond to this? I don't know. That's my clever way. Yeah,
because I can only hear positive because that's my mental state and I need everyone around me to be positive and I need you to be positive when I'm not around you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, toxic positivity.
It affects the structure of water, Heather.
Yes.
And then you drink it, and then it becomes you. So.
Okay.
So we're done with the conspiracy segment, but.
So, Gabbie. What are you going to work on in the next 2 weeks?
Well, actually, there are some other things that came up this week that I wanted to quickly talk about. Okay. One of them is I went to an eye doctor recently and, when you're tired or you've been driving a lot or you've been reading a lot and you see double. And so you just go ahead, slap a hand over one eye so that you can just see one of the words at a time. Or you're driving and it's at night and you're seeing the street signs as double. And so you just drive around like a pirate with your hand covering one eye so that you can just read things. I went to an eye doctor a couple years ago and I was talking about this and she was very not only dismissive, but like almost actively angry with me that I like brought it up, I guess. And she was like what you're describing is serious. I can't even remember the vocabulary. I can only really remember like my feeling walking away from this situation, which was like, that wasn't helpful. She just sort of was like treating me as though my concerns were just to get attention from her, I guess. I don't know. I mean, this is Kaiser and the doctors are only allowed to talk to you for like 15 minutes at a time for these appointments. So I went to another Kaiser doctor yesterday and the first half was great. She was telling me how young my eyes are, mostly because everybody in the waiting room had like beyond white hair and their hearing aids were going off like a theremin, like that instrument where you wave your hands next to an antenna and it goes like, But they didn't seem to care. They were just sitting there with their ears just doing like a full EDM set, and they didn't seem to care at all. So
did you bring the glow sticks?
Yeah, I was just like, I was adding bass because it was a lot of treble. So I was just, but they did a lot of like not making eye contact with me. So I don't know what that's about. But when the eye doctor was like, oh my gosh, look at your eyes, corneas, clear, retinas, stunning, no floaters in the eye, just gorgeous, youthful eyes. And I was like, thank you, continue. And then I said, there is this one thing. So I talked about the double vision, and she was like, okay, let's do some tests. So we did a bunch of tests. And the fun thing is, it's not double vision side to side, which is like the classic double vision, drunk people seeing double, your eyes kind of cross and you can see two of things, but it's like, again, side to side. Mine is one on top of the other. And it requires something called prism lenses that is like added to your prescription. And it's because my eye muscles are being weak. So I didn't like that. Didn't like it at all. I was like, so are there exercises I can do? She said, doesn't work for adults. I was like, okay, cute. And then she brought up perimenopause, which I was like, can we go back to me being youthful again? Because I loved that. And she's also pointed out that I apparently tip my head slightly to the left. And that is me trying to line up my eyes, because when the muscles are weak, what is happening is my left eye is moving slightly upwards and my right eye is moving slightly downwards. And I don't mean like in my face. I mean just like independently of each other, like in the socket.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. Immediately I was thinking of Marty Feldman, who is like in Young Frankenstein. He's Igor. Yeah. And he's a very famous comic actor whose eyes were, I believe they call them wall eyes, where one eye is going to one wall and the other eye is going to the opposite. So I guess mine would be ceiling floor eyes eventually. Yeah. The thing is it's making me feel very out of control. And it's also bringing up a lot of past stuff about health. Which is I have some actual health conditions, and I've had a lot of medical people not only poo-poo them, but also tell me that it was largely or completely in my head. And then having to do my own research and then bring it back to medical professionals and then being like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that is actually, like, you are hypermobile. And I'm like, yeah, I sure am. And they're like, oh my God. And it turns out hypermobility affects like all these different aspects of your body. But then, the fact that I was depressed, I used to have a ton of UTIs, urinary tract infections, and no trigger warning, I guess, for the listeners at home, but my urine samples, sometimes the culture would come back negative. Like there would be no bacteria grown in the culture. So they would be like, you don't have a urinary tract infection. And I would be like, I am in so much pain right now. I swear, like, and I got to the point of incontinence, which meant I pissed myself in public, which is... yeah, that sucks. You really feel like you can't trust your body. And so for a long time, I was wearing these gigantic pads and adult diapers when I left the house as like a early 30-something, late 20-something. When I had mono, and I was not only in denial myself, but other people around me were in denial and told me I was being lazy. I once got stuck 5 minutes away from my house. I'd gone to a coffee shop to study. I'd walked literally 5 minutes away. I studied for a couple hours. I realized I wanted to use the bathroom. I needed about 20 minutes to get up the strength to go use the bathroom in the coffee shop. Made it back, decided I had done enough studying and I was going to walk back. And I walked out to the curb and collapsed in exhaustion and couldn't move and had to stay there for another 20 minutes until I could get it together to kind of like prop myself back up inside the coffee shop in a chair to look like a normal human being and realized I was stuck. Like I was
Wow.
physically stuck, and I was 25 years old. And I had to call my roommate who was working and wait for her to get off of work a couple hours later so that she could come pick me up and drive me, again, a 5-minute walk to our house.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucked. And so I just didn't trust my body at all. All of this is to say, like, I've had a lot of doctors tell me, like, oh, this is just your depression. This is just your anxiety. The urinary tract stuff, I went to 7 different urologists until one of them told me, oh, you have interstitial cystitis. But, that was years of incredibly painful. Anyway, being denied by medical professionals is never fun, but I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. Why did I start talking about this? Oh yeah, this stupid prism lenses. So I'm feeling kind of out of control again. Like I can't trust my body. And I know it's part of growing older, but it's just bringing up a lot of stuff. So OCD is really trying it with me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's super fun. And then on top of that, I just got out of a, let's say, complicated relationship. And we're both not talking to each other, not for like, I don't know how I want to phrase this. It's like not because the two of us have like something toxic and we just need to give each other space and, like blah, 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 but because the situation outside of our relationship is so messed, I guess you could say, that it's really for the best interest of both of us that we just not talk to each other. And so that's fine. I said that so harshly. I was like, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's
I'm
totally
over it.
fine.
It just happened yesterday,
it happened yesterday. I have no strong feeling because it's totally fine. And if you say it fine 20 times, it fine.
Yeah.
So the OCD is really trying it because I can't talk to this person. It's the whole don't think of a pink elephant, right? And now all I can think about is the pink elephant. And even leading up to this decision not to talk to each other, I was already kind of like, oh yeah, this relationship should really be more of a friendship or, is not serving me in whatever ways. And so I was already trying to kind of like disengage from it. But now the fact that there is like a boundary set. Oh, but I want to say this thing to the person, or I want to tell them about this other thing, or, now I have all these questions that I want them to answer or whatever it is. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So you're seeking reassurance.
Yeah. Seeking reassurance and ruminating like a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Just like trying to run these like catastrophic scenarios and worst case scenarios and black and white thinking and blah, 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 all the cognitive distortions. So no, I'm not going to do this. And stupid OCD, like we've done this thing before. We've done the like piling pennies in groups of 3. We've done the walking 3 steps this way, 2 steps that way. We've done all of these stupid physical compulsions because I didn't know you were OCD. And once I figured out you were OCD and I did the exposure work, we're done. Don't be bringing this back. I don't like this. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can't control our OCD. That's the worst part of it all, right? I mean, we can have the tools to kind of manage, and train our brain to do different things, but we need those tools we need those tools to be able to bring us back to kind of moving forward, moving towards the things that we value most. And yeah, it's hard because I was reading something about in terms of having OCD, and I don't know the exact things because I'm not remembering exactly what it was, but it is something inside your brain that's actually, and then knowing that
through.
Yeah. And so having OCD is a process that's abnormal. Yeah. And so knowing that is that realization that, okay, I'm living with it, is that kind of acceptance of moving on. But I know when you're in the thick of a bunch of situations, I mean, you're dealing with physical health issues that's out of your control, that's changing, right? That's scary. A relationship that you cared about ending. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
And searching for a new job. I mean, these are all like, these are all very big things to happen all at once. And I think the thing that I want to say as your friend, not just on the podcast, is that you have to just give yourself a little grace in the situation, right? And experience a little bit of compassion that all of these things, I mean, just having one of these things is complicated for anybody outside of OCD, outside of anything, can bring complexities to your life and rock it out of balance. But you're handling all three of these things.
Yeah.
And no judgment on whether or not it's going well or whatever, but you are the ability to be able to see that these are hard for you. That's great that you can see that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing all of this. I mean, it's a lot.
And thank you for listening. I'm really grateful I have you as a friend.
Me too.
Yeah. And also I think the OCD it's like what you were saying before, like the trying to keep me from rejection. I think it's trying to keep me from being sad right now. Yeah. And I'm sad.
You know what that happens, right? If you don't feel the feeling, you can't get through it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just perpetuates it.
Doomed to repeat.
Yep.
So on that happy note, what do you want to do this coming couple weeks?
So for me, I'm only going to give myself one task to try to do. Not because I feel like that giving myself one, I'll be successful. Well, that's kind of true. I think for me, I really do want to, I didn't talk about a thing. I should say, so I submitted my short humor piece and it was rejected. And so this is the second time that I submitted a short humor piece and was rejected. And the distance between these two was about 1.5 years.
Wow.
And the first time I was rejected, it really hurt.
Yeah.
To the point of like, I never wanted to do it again.
Yeah.
And almost gave up. But to be fair, there was a lot of shit happening at that time. And so I just, my dad just died and, all this other stuff was happening. So I don't know what I was expecting beyond that.
Yeah.
When I got rejected, it felt like, that hurt a little, it's like getting rejected, but it didn't feel like it deterred me.
Awesome.
To try to submit it somewhere else.
Okay.
The first thing that I want to do is I'm going to submit the same piece to some people for review because I made some quick changes to it and I feel like I want to punch up a few jokes. And so that's just what I want to do. And then the intent is within a 2-week time period, I'm going to resubmit it to another place and then hope for another rejection or get it finally out in the open and people can read it. So kind of excited about that.
Hells yeah.
Yeah. And then I want to work on this podcast. I mean, I want to get episode 12 done and out for everybody to listen to. So because I think hearing Ege and hearing another voice and a very, very funny voice, I've been laughing as I've been editing. So so very happy about that. And I'm excited for others to listen to it. So these are the two things I'm going to work on.
That's fucking amazing, man.
I'm glad
you are. I'm also really glad that you talked about how it felt with the rejections with the writing and the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's big, man.
I know. It was huge. I mean, even to acknowledge that change, I was, I don't know, for me, it felt big. To be able to notice that difference and then actually feel the sting and allowing myself to feel the sting, because I think that's the misconception of like, as you were talking about positive thinking, it's like, just put a positive spin on it. At least for me, not being able to feel the initial pain is a bad thing for me. Pain is a feeling that's natural. Just like sadness, just like anger, just like happiness, they're all feelings. And so talking a little bit in my head that's a little negative, a little criticism, but just noting it as, oh, I'm being self-critical. I mean, I was like blown away that I was able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's big. It's huge.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to do any acknowledgments either in the moment or shortly thereafter of this is what's happening it is such a gigantic first step. It's almost like 50 to 75% of the work.
Yeah. I know. And it's like you don't see the work incrementally, right? Until a moment like that happens. To anybody else, they're like, oh, yeah, I felt that before. And then they've moved on. But in the way that our brain processes pain and urgency and other things like that, it was a huge step to be able to acknowledge, even though it happened, even though things happened and I wasn't judging myself in terms of about my criticism to myself, but acknowledging that the sensation of feeling that sting, that kind of like, oh, but then at the same time, I don't want to keep reiterating this. To me, it's just like, it's huge to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if we were talking about it before the podcast or whatever, but it's like the only way through the feelings, through the pain, the only way to truly deal with it is through it. And the OCD sends us into these little eddies. Yeah, we were talking about it. It's like it just doesn't get processed.
No.
But it's under the lie that this is how you deal with it. This is the correct way to deal with it. I know how to deal with it. My name is OCD, and you just got to touch that pine cone.
Or just continually ruminate on all the things that you could have changed or whatever. Yeah.
Or research until you find an answer that feels right. Yeah. Oh, today's podcast was just a lighthearted romp. Yeah, we're a comedy podcast.
Woo! Let's talk comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think I like really, as you were talking about the second rejection, I was like, oh gosh, I hope she, applies again because, from the outsider's perspective, and I've said it before on this podcast, you were such a phenomenal writer and you were so goddamn hilarious as a writer and just so talented that I'm like, oh, these stupid idiots didn't jump at the chance of being the first people to publish a Heather Nye piece. Like, I mean, they're fucking lost. But like, on top of that, I'm just like, oh, I hope this isn't an eddy that Heather gets stuck in that she's going to ruminate over. But also I was like, curiosity mindset. Why don't we just stop and listen to Heather and see where she goes with it? And curiously enough, you said that you're going to reapply. I'm just so proud of you. That's dope.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave myself some space also to not just jump and then submit because I also felt like I needed to feel the rejection in the moment. Yeah. And try a little bit slower at things too, because I also think that there's a thing that I do where I just like get it done.
Yeah.
So just so I can't look at it anymore.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work to my benefit, at least right now.
That's again, good acknowledgement.
Ding.
You're just good. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Do you ever listen to Neil Brennan's podcast Blocks?
No, but I've heard clips on Instagram.
Whenever they like somebody says a block that they actually have or whatever, there's a little ding in the background. So I feel like every time we like do an OCD thing or something, we should have like a quack. I don't know.
Yeah.
And just pulling from Neil. Oh, I'm going to talk about me this week.
Okay.
These 2 weeks. What am I doing? It's job search season, baby. Job search season, feeling all the feels, processing. Yeah, I don't think there's any comedy stuff per se, but that's okay. I'm working towards building the base so I can do more comedy.
Yeah. You're just you're building that. I was going to say fortress. And I'm like, what is the fortress?
It's a fortress of solitude. Nobody's getting in.
For comedy?
Yeah. Comedy exists best in a vacuum. And if you don't know that already, like, I don't know what to tell you. The thing about comedy is no laughter. And that's what drives me is When I was in high school, I had 3 career aspirations. I either wanted to be a backcountry ranger, I wanted to be a hermit, or I wanted to be a drag queen. The classic 3.
I'm trying to find the thread that's related to all of those things. And I'm like, none of those things are related, Gabbie. It's like...
you're looking at her. That's the thread. Just pure nonsense. What if I just didn't think about combining them? What if I was such a backcountry ranger, like so far in the backcountry that I was basically a hermit? That's 2. Dressed in full like gown regalia, because I didn't want to be a drag king. I wanted to be a drag queen. I wanted to do like heightened femininity nonsense, like the ridiculousness of the gender binary. So just out there in corsetry and high heels on the mountain. Classic.
By yourself. Yeah. For yourself, by yourself.
Spitting jokes at the mountain goats.
That's
right.
Well, is this the end of our pod?
Sure is. Welcome to the end of the podcast. You made it. And now we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Feel good about yourself. Goodbye. Welcome to the end of the show. This is Gabbie Blachman.
And this is Heather Nye.
Thank you for listening to Comically Exposed. We are just a little show with 2 creators who edit and produce each episode. We appreciate all your support.
If you like what you heard, please follow us on Instagram at comicallyexp.podcast. That's comicallyexp.podcast.
Or subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes drop every other Wednesday.
Also, special thanks to Track Club and Golden Finch for providing the music.
Thanks for listening. And hey, everybody, today is a great day to expose yourself. Okay, until next time, ta-da for ta-da.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.